The theoretical defense for DEI policies has always been that they are intended to help qualified people belonging to minority groups bypass the hypothesized structural barriers holding them back. In practice, however, these policies do little more than exclude anyone of talent and experience in the majority population, and where Hollywood is concerned, ensure that all our entertainment will suck. Film threats Chris Gore and Alan Ng have been on a roll as of late. Most relevant to the topic at hand, on January 13th, we published a video covering their scoop of a Hollywood screenwriter, an anonymous whistleblower, exposing how skilled and talented people were excluded from the industry simply because they were white. And as we added, this also applied if they were white and gay, because not to put too fine a point on it, they weren't gay enough to score any DEI brownie points. Instead, writers who did check more boxes were artificially promoted and pushed forward, and more often than not, way beyond their level of qualification and experience, to the detriment of whatever project they were working on. Well, on January 29th, Film Threat published the follow-up article, Male and Pale is Stale, Responses to an Open Letter to the WGA, in which they published several letters they had received from people working in several facets of the entertainment industry. And I may revisit some of the others in a later video, but the one I want to focus on now is a letter from another veteran writer and WGA member, who confirmed that not only were the experiences of this whistleblower reflective of reality, but that things are even worse. This letter reads, "Writers hired on comic book shows are told it's a positive that they are unfamiliar with the original comic book and not a fan of the existing IP, because they want to do a modern new take on the material relevant to today." If you wondered why things like, for instance, Marvel's Secret Invasion on Disney Plus can be such unwatchable garbage, and title aside, have nothing to do with the source material, this is why. There are policies in place to ensure everything being written is all about messaging, and that it's so current that it will be even more unwatchable than it was upon release in just a year or two. Because that's what happens when you write for now. You date everything to the point of unwatchability once now has passed. It gets worse though. Writers are asked, why this story today? How is it relevant politically today to the existing narrative they're pushing on our culture? That, by the way, is another way of asking, what have you done to ensure that the content in question will be ideopolitical propaganda aimed at harming and further fracturing Western society in general and America in particular? So masks are coming off right here. And why are you the person to tell this story? Because I have talent and wrote it is not a valid answer. What is a valid answer is because I'm a member of this aggrieved group or class and only we can tell our own story. And that is how you exclude anyone with talent and experience, and who would be qualified for the job, with someone who has the right skin color. And they are assumed to be skilled storytellers, though there is no system in place to verify that they are. Now, I'm not saying that no writers belonging to what is defined as aggrieved groups are talented, experienced, or qualified storytellers. I'm sure many are. But what I am saying is that with policies like these in place, there is no system in place to ensure that it is the most talented that get ahead. On the contrary, this system only ensures that the most talented members of the majority population are excluded. In this sense, I do feel bad for those with talent and skill belonging to the defined aggrieved groups, because there is no longer any way to tell if they got there based on merit or if they are mere diversity hires promoted beyond their skill level. But beyond that suspicion now invariably being cast on those with actual merit to their name, there are further consequences, all of which are designed to keep experienced talent out. The letter continues. This leads to a heads we win, tails you lose game, where if you don't include diverse characters, you are dinged for having an all-white/non-diverse cast, regardless of the time or place of the story or historical accuracy. And if you do have a diverse case, then you are guilty of cultural appropriation. See, that's a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right there. This means that unless you are, for example, African American, you are not allowed to tell a story about an African American character, or disabled, or LGBTQIAP+. Unless you are of that specific subgroup, you can't write it. Furthermore, there's a bias toward the twofer or threefer hire. Being gay, for example, isn't enough now. You have to be gay and African American or Latinx or undocumented, unhoused, differently abled. Then, on the D.E.I. scorecard, they have 2 or 3 times positive score for the hire. And to give the proper motivation that people are promoted solely based on their identity and not their talent. The Writers Guild has a diversity program where the guild pays for the diversity hire's salary. Most of these writers aren't picked up after the free ride expires. Many of these writers, hired only for diversity purposes, feel obligated to push stories that reflect the specific box they checked. So a transgender writer will be pitching stories exclusively about that experience. Of course, this all explains what has gone so terribly wrong in all our genre entertainment. Having people who aren't fans of the IP, like Star Wars, comic books, etc., results in a product that has no respect to the existing fans. Then, when fans complain, they are insulted as toxic. What company would make a product that insults the consumers? It is insane. What's also not being discussed is the anti-Semitism behind much of the push for diversity. Jews are classified as whites and thus not a minority, despite being 2% of the population and historically victims of mistreatment and genocide. The mantra is male and pale is stale. Out with the old order and in with the new. Anyone who questions the new orthodoxy will, of course, be denounced as not promoting a diverse workplace or, worse, racist. The system encourages cry-bullies, those who complain of oppression as a means of moving up the ladder. Push out someone higher up the chain and move up. When John Lasseter was forced out for allegedly unrequested hugging, it was asked, "Can we get a woman to run this place now?" This creates an incentive system for complaining about slights, perceived slights, or microaggressions. And once these are documented by HR, some corrective action must be taken. Training, reprimand, and the person who complained now can't be fired, or it be retaliatory. Writers' rooms have historically been a freewheeling place for spitballing ideas and jokes. Now, folks are on eggshells for fear of offending D.E.I. standards, which are forever shifting. But, just like the previous whistleblower we covered in that previous video, this one also complains about the negative impact on his career, which he evidently thinks unfair, because he's always been a champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So why should his career have to suffer for it now when it's finally here? He writes, though I do condense a little bit here, "I've been a liberal progressive my entire life, and a few of the Emmy-nominated shows I've worked on actively advanced the causes being fought for. But now it's like I'm no longer wanted at the table solely because of my age, gender, and skin color." Shutting anyone out for any of those reasons doesn't feel like D.E.I., but more like its opposite. No, that's what D.E.I. is and always was. You just didn't read the fine print. Now it's starting to feel like the new paradigm isn't about equality or equity. Well, it never claimed to be about equality, and you clearly didn't understand what equity means, though you seem to be catching up now. It's about a complete reversal of the power dynamic. Maybe that's a black matriarchy, I don't know. I'm all for diversity in this business, but now white guys are lucky to account for even 20% of a writer's room, if that. And that would be by design. In the D.E.I. and ESG context, diversity means one thing and one thing only: non-white. Whites are the only group that is subject to restrictions. Again, this was always there in the fine print. And yet again, this whistleblower seems to be catching on now. We're not allowed to say anything to anyone about any of this. Because of our gender and skin color, we no longer check the right boxes. It's like we're supposed to just shut up and go away. Well, it's true, you are. This is D.E.I. But I have a family to feed, and I'm really good at my job. If any of this got out there, I could very easily end any hope I have to continue working in this business. Well, Mr. Self-Appointed Liberal Progressive, I regret to inform you that what you are suffering right now is the direct and inevitable end result of the values and policies you have always held and fought for. You didn't do it alone, and you did it for what you thought were all the right reasons, but that doesn't change the fact that you did this. You brought this on. A useful idiot is defined as a naive and credulous person who can be manipulated or exploited to advance a cause or political agenda. And that's exactly what you and every last one of your fellow self-appointed progressive writer friends who always fought for and at every opportunity voted for this are. Useful idiots. I have no reservations about calling this whistleblower just that, because in the fine print, this outcome was spelled out since day one. And yet, up till this point, he fought for it, and I'd imagine he voted for it every step of the way too. I just hope that this writer, and his friends in the same boat, eventually will be able to accept and come to terms with the fact that they were had. Because only then can they start becoming part of the solution, and no one else is going to come swooping in to fix this for them. They did their part in bringing this situation about. If they want it resolved, they're gonna have to do their part in that too. And here's the good news, they can. Because what I see here is a silent majority of Hollywood talent who are terrified and allow themselves to be brutalized, victimized, and held hostage by a minority of crazies in positions of power. If they all collectively got together and spoke out against this madness, they could go a long way towards ending it, certainly where Hollywood is concerned, tomorrow. But until then, this is going to continue for as long as the numerous people anonymously reaching out to Film Threat allows it to. Granted, that is a good first step, and I commend that, but it's just the first step. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.